who should we be looking out for as we try to grab a bigger share of the pie?
Well, I think when Jeff talks about China, I'm sure he'll talk about some more detail, but you have to look at it from the source market perspective. So if you look at China, Korea, Japan, these places, your competitors are Europe and North America, primarily. And positioning Australia as first choice for people coming to take their holidays is something which historically we've always done very well, but needs continued focus and continued spend. But it's going to get more competitive, much more competitive.
All right, questions in the room. We have question number 3 down here and questions number 2. First question.
David Beerman, University of Technology, Sydney. I'm very pleased to hear that your relations with the UN World Tourism Organisation has improved. I can remember being at a conference a few years back ago when Francesco Frangielli dismissed the WTTC as that batch of bastards. My more serious question though, you mentioned about the fragmentation of tourism's power on government. Now that you are working very well with the UNWTO, what are the areas that you see that you're cooperating with well to advance the tourism agenda, particularly the topics that you mentioned, which were so very important?
That's a great question, and if I can broaden out the response, we work very well with UNWTO because we pool all our research and our soundbites of information. And I should have been in Korea this week, which is where they have their annual get-together for the tourism ministers. But it doesn't stop there, because the relationships that we're now forging with IATA for airlines, with Clear for cruising, with hotel investment companies, with parties, to name but a few, are really important because the leaders of those organisations are all relatively new. Tony Tyler for IATA is one. And they all see that we actually have to pool our information and our soundbites and data. And what I mean by that is there's no point in me wandering around the world and Tally Riffai and Tony Tyler and the Clear guys talking about different pieces of information, different factual information. And if we can consolidate that information, so when we're with Prime Ministers and Presidents and giving the same information out, then we'll have a huge impact. Historically, each of these organisations has worked independently. I went to an IATA meeting in Singapore in June. I hadn't been to one for about 15 years. It was quite shocking, actually, because it was exactly the same format as it was 15 years ago. But the airlines are very inwardly focused just on their specific issues. So my role is to broaden them all out, so the airlines, to make them understand a lot more the impact they're having on the rest of the travel distribution chain. So the short answer to your question is, a coalition of all of these trade bodies is what we're after. And in November at Philip Wolf's Focusrite conference, we are launching that coalition. We're going to have 40 leaders of the trade bodies around the world. We're going to get together in Florida for the Focusrite conference. And we're going to figure out how we work better together to get the message across to governments about the impact and the GDP impact of travel and tourism.
All right, there's a question, number 2 microphone at the bottom at the front of the room.
David, hi, Justin Watson here from the Tourism and Transport Forum, which in many ways is the Australian version of WTTC. If we accept that all taxes are bad, and especially the APD out of the UK, there's been some news this week, I believe, that the central government, so the federal government in the UK is going to devolve the APD to Northern Ireland and then perhaps Scotland. Does that give you some hope that perhaps when the impact is seen in Scotland of increased visitation and in Northern Ireland, that then perhaps the central government may look at that? And are there examples of elsewhere in the world where states are allowed to actually levy aviation taxes?
If they're going to devolve it to Ireland and Scotland, that's news to me. I haven't heard that. But the UK government don't listen to any of the logical arguments about why this should come out. And the only way we can prove it to them is the research that we do with our IATA to show them that GDP impact on the UK is much worse than the income stream they're getting. Now, I've been to see the finance ministry of the UK with a group of tourism ministers from the Caribbean and South Africa and Singapore. And to be honest, I was very angry and upset because the finance ministry people that these guys had flown in to see dismissed them in about 30 minutes. It was almost as if they were not in the room. We're not interested in the impact on the tourism in the Caribbean. It's just an income tax for us. We've got our own problems. We're going to continue with it. So I have no hope at this stage that they're going to reverse out of it until we can prove to them that they're damaging the UK more through GDP loss than we're getting from that income stream. And what you referred to in Northern Ireland was a relaxation on one particular destination, a long-haul destination out of Northern Ireland, which Continental were about to pull the plug on. And because they're about to pull the plug on it, the UK government said, okay, for that particular route, we'll reduce the MGD. But I don't have a lot of confidence that it's going to get removed anytime soon.
And just a final question perhaps, just gives a sense, when you travel around the world, you talk to all these folks, you get to see who's doing what well. Which destinations do you think are developing their tourism right at the moment? You talked about the Americans. On the one hand, they're getting their act together nationally, on the other hand, they're shooting themselves in the foot with this concern with security all the time, which is a dampening effect on tourism. Who's doing well? Who to look out for?
Okay, well, it's the short answer is, my view of Australia where it sits is genuinely Australia historically marketed itself very well. And generally in the past it's been probably cut above other parts of the world in terms of marketing. But when you look more generally around the places like France and Spain, UK and the US, the ones that are moving best are the ones that are more focused and really understand the impact of travel and tourism. And some other countries don't. And that has a real impact on how they position themselves. So competition for Australia, we've talked about it already. It's Asia, it's Europe, it's the United States, and will continue to be for the foreseeable future.
And that's why your focus is on talking to government, because you see that integrated approach between industry and government and all the other stakeholders as critical to whether a tourism industry in a particular nation does well or not so well.
Exactly. This private partnership, private-public partnership is so critical. And in a country like China, you see it working very well. The dividing lines between what's private and what's government-owned are pretty blurred. But they have really got their act together in terms of their 5- and 10-year planning cycles and knowing the amounts of money they're going to be investing in their infrastructure to keep pace with the growth.
All right, you didn't need the Red Bull. You've done very well. Please thank David Scowsall.